Welcome back to News Check, and thanks for keeping us company. Yes, indeed, yesterday a lot transpired yesterday, and that is forming basis of our discussion here. Earlier on, for the first 1 hour there, we were just more or less perusing over what happened yesterday. First things first, Apex Court did make the determination on the presidential election, affirming President-elect William Ruto's win in the August polls. Another thing that transpired yesterday is, of course, the reactions by people from all walks of life. We visited so many counties, Kakamega as well. We had Mombasa, we had Kirinyaga, we had Nyeri. Yesterday it was actually a whole load of checking other counties, how things are in the country, not forgetting right here in the capital Nairobi. Also, IEBC had a presser for the first time ever. They have been clean and vindicated by the court in regards to elections. So a lot of reactions, and that is what is forming basis of our discussion here. Let me now rope in my panel of experts, beginning from my immediate left. We have Charles Omanga, who is a political analyst and a governance expert, and is also an advocate of the High Court. Just next to him, we have Torosterdt Alenga, who is a political analyst, and next to him, we have Hudson Ndeda, who is actually Bishop Hudson Ndeda, who is the national chairman of Church and Clergy Association of Kenya. Gentlemen, karibuni sana. Okay. Let me begin from Wakili here. How did you perceive the Apex Court judgment yesterday and the reactions thereafter by Kenyans?
I think the court did what they had to do because, you know, the decisions of the court are based on evidence and the matter before it. So, therefore, it was in the wisdom of the court that they ruled in the way they ruled. And more importantly, it is something good as a nation that we have really tried to make strides in terms of our electoral reforms. So I think that forms the basis and the foundation of how subsequent elections should and will be conducted. So therefore, to me, I think there is nothing much that I can say in terms of what happened yesterday at the court, because the evidence was evaluated and that informed the decision of the court.
Alenga, you've seen Kenyans from all walks of life and others actually urging other Kenyans, let's embrace this and move forward. And if you've noticed, there's a lot of traffic today. It's more or less like Kenyans who are seated somewhere and now they have decided to come out of their cocoons.
Yeah, thank you very much, Njue, for hosting me on your show today. And I think following the ruling yesterday, it's imperative for us to put into question the maturity that Kenyans have exhibited throughout the voting period, waiting for the results and then waiting for the ruling of the court. It shows some level of maturity and trust in our systems, because many Kenyans trusted that once the verdict of the Supreme Court will be given, they were ready to embrace it. And as we see from the resumption of activities, as you have rightly pointed, it shows that Kenyans have faith in the courts, and what was adjudicated yesterday and given as a verdict is something that Kenyans have embraced, and they're ready to move forward and build the country.
Bishop Hudson,
yes.
The day before yesterday, that was on Sunday, we saw a section of the clergy talking about Kenyans, kindly let's uphold the rule of law, let's observe peace, let's accept the court verdict. And indeed, they did exactly that. And we're also expecting a presser from Ufungamano House, where they are expected to be holding, the clergy is expected to be holding a presser in regards to the presidential election, the petition itself, and how Kenyans have embraced that as we move forward. I would like to hear your sentiments in regards to how you perceived it and how Kenyans have actually, they've decided, yes, indeed, let's now forge forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. First, I really want to congratulate the President-elect, Dr. William Ruto, for his election, and want to assure him that the Church and Clergy Association of Kenya will support you, will pray for you, and stand with you in your endeavors to rule this nation. Mm-hmm. Coming to what you have asked, I feel our democracy has really matured, and Kenyans are coming of age, and they are, as my colleagues said, they are beginning to believe in institutions, and also it shows that Kenyans want to move on. We have wasted a lot of time in this country. COVID has affected us. We have had several issues affecting our economy. So it shows that Kenyans want to get back to work. And for me, peace has won. Nobody lost the election and nobody won the election. Peace has won, because when we see the peace across the country, I think everybody was praying for peace.
Yesterday, even civil society is coming out to thank Kenyans, politicians from all walks of life, talking about let's now manage our expectations in regards to the government that we are expecting to be sworn in next week. I would like to sample some of your sentiments in regards to that. Omanga.
I think it is something very, very important. I remember there is something that Reverend Oginde said, that justice leads to everlasting peace. So where there in the absence of justice, there can never be a lasting peace. So therefore, from where I sit, I think it is very, very important and critical that we maintain peace. And as we endeavor, because either way, where in elections, there are always those who win and there is those who lose. And in this regard, I think no one has lost. I think the nation has won. And therefore, it has become absolutely important that we try to ensure that we use our diversity as a source of our unity so that we can build a prosperous nation.
Indeed. And Alenga, still picking up on what Omanga has talked about, is that in an election there has to be winners and losers, and unfortunately former Prime Minister Raila Odinga lost, and he went to the Apex Court for the 4th time in a row to challenge that, and the Apex Court said that yes, indeed the election were carried out in a free, fair and credible manner, albeit some challenges which I'm quite sure that the Apex Court will be pointing out in their comprehensive judgment that will be forming basis of us making our elections better. Yes, some may argue that indeed we have lost, but democracy has won. Looking at how he has done for the 4 years, there are some election laws and there are some laws that we have thwacked just because of these petitions that have been brought in court. We are seeing where we are vulnerable, we may correct. Where we should add, we add. Where we should subtract, we subtract. Alenga.
I think fundamentally the direction we're going as a country is amazing, and I think even for our neighboring countries, they have something to learn, they have something to write home about. You saw in the Supreme Court there was a delegation of former high-ranking judiciary officials from our neighboring countries and even the Southern Africa. They came to observe how it is that we do our thing, and I totally believe what they saw is something they can actually recommend to other nations to be able to handle electoral issues in that particular manner. Because the moment you subject yourself to the law and you're a stickler to it, then you create no rooms for other side shows and perhaps extra constitutional steps that people might take in their means to demonstrate what they strongly feel. What is fundamental to discuss is also the state of our democracy. If you look at the quietude that is being exhibited in the country after the elections and after the Supreme Court question, we need to actually interrogate this silence as thinkers, as political analysts, as policy people, as religious leaders, and ask ourselves, is this silence a silence of satisfaction, or is it a silence of giving up of a society where we have come to a level where we think our elections are not really meaningful, and therefore whoever wins, wins, whoever loses, loses, and we move on. If that is the form of silence that we have, then it is really questionable, and it spells doom for the future, because when people suppress their emotions and try to act normal, with time, there reaches a time where their tensile strain gets to the limit and they burst out. So we must also interrogate that kind of silence, and then also do a clinical check on our democracy. Does it still make meaning? Does the election still make sense? Remember, we had about 22 million Kenyans who registered to vote, and only 14 million turned out to vote. A whole 8 million sat home and said they have nothing to do with that election. So progressively, if we can now look at maybe have a projection of 2027, how many Kenyans are going to turn out to vote? So are we going into a dispensation where where our electoral system will be ceremonious and cosmetic, where citizens don't see any value for it. If that is it, then we must stand up and try to recultivate our democracy, because it is one that we got through stress and strain. It never came just like that. So we have a space to protect, we have a heritage to defend, and we have a journey to secure, because where we are, I really question the kind of silence that is in the country. And if that were it, then the new government that is coming in then has a very cardinal responsibility to bring the country together, to speak hope to even those who lost, because we are all Kenyans, we all pay taxes, and we are entitled to whatever comes from this country. So I think for President William Ruto, the task ahead is quite gigantic, and the good thing is that it is spelled out how it's going to be.
Bishop Ndeda, and picking from where Alenga has brought about a very interesting point, and indeed the president-elect yesterday in his first speech talked about extending an olive branch to all those who they were in the ballot with, and bringing Kenyans together. But he was quick to note that there's not going to be a handshake that he said that like it has always been. It's one of the most democratic things that a president can say. Yes, indeed, we are working together, but everyone has to have his position. And he talked about a robust and an opposition that will hold them accountable.
Yes, I was at Karen when he was speaking those words.
Okay.
I want Kenyans to know this. The winner is not always the one you supported or the one you wanted, but the one the majority have said is the winner. So we must come to a place where we accept that it is Dr. William Ruto who has won this election, because that will help us to move on. And coming to what you said about what he said about he doesn't expect a handshake and he doesn't believe in a handshake, we will come back and look at the handshake government. There are good things that came from that government, but because of lack of opposition, there was a lot of corruption that was unchecked because there was no opposition. So on that note, then I want to agree with the president-elect that we need to have a strong opposition in the country that will put the government of the day in checks and balances, so that they can remind them, you promised to do ABCD, you have not done it, and when there is a wrong in that government, they can point out, and especially that area of corruption. I really want to accept that the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and even during the period of handshake, they have done a lot. We have seen roads and all that, but equally we have lost a lot of money. But there was nobody to point out to it because there was no opposition. So on that, I want to agree with him on that point.
And yesterday, Wakili, President-elect William Ruto was not the only winner, as in regards to what the court said. IEBC was another winner. And looking at the issues that have dogged IEBC since the days of Chesoni and Kivui to Isaac Hassan, for the first time, we've had the court declare that indeed the IEBC did exactly what they were supposed to do. Yes, indeed, they do acknowledge there were some challenges here and there, but that vindication just strengthens the confidence in Kenyans in the electoral process.
I think it was something very important for the court to mention, because you remember the issues of technology and the processes that are involved emanated from the Apex Court equally from in the 2017 election petition. So the court indeed indicted the IEBC to ensure that the election is conducted in a manner that really conforms with the dictates of the Constitution and the electoral laws. Therefore, because there are a lot of issues there about the chairperson not really working as a team, was a lone ranger, and then there was the questions of the forms, the technology. But I think that vindication is something that is important, because now at least it tries to inspire confidence of the public in the workings of the commission. And then at least also when we talk about what Alenga was saying about the silence, we must also actually go back to the drawing board and try to ensure that whatever the absence of the silence, the absence of the violence, what does it really portend? Because therefore, it could mean that maybe there is that element of frustrations and dejection. So if at all the silence can actually be equated to a level of dejection from the general populace, then I think it is incumbent upon the government and all other relevant institutions to ensure that we really, this democracy of ours that is continuously growing in leaps and bounds, we really nurture it, and we ensure that any constructive engagement as regards to election is something that is actually involves and inspires the confidence of the people. But at least I want to mention something about the politics of handshake. You know, handshake sometimes, according to what I think, it also kills democracy to some extent. What do I mean? What I mean is that because we know what is the role of the opposition, and when we have a government that do not really have any checks, or there are those people who actually try to interrogate and question certain processes that are not really going right in the country, then therefore the democracy loses its meaning. So I think there should be handshake in terms of ensuring we were in a political context, but now the will of the people have superseded. But not to that, let us come and work together. We can borrow a leaf, and I've always said that all these politicians and all these political formations had an intention, a very good intention, to take our country forward. Therefore, what the government in power should do is actually try to borrow what did the other side thought about in terms of infrastructure, what do they thinking in terms of security, what were they thinking in terms of education, so that they can try to actually clothe it and make whatever the plans they had better.
And Alenga, looking at what the president talked about yesterday, he had about 10 minutes to address the nation in regards to the election. He thanked Kenyans for, of course, upholding the rule of law and ensuring that the elections were peaceful. But he did not congratulate his deputy, who is now the president-elect. And more so, he did, of course, express his opinion as a president and said that indeed the Apex Court didn't pronounce itself, but we also need to interrogate the institutions that we have that are mandated or given the mandate by the law to carry out democracy and governance in the country, judiciary being one of them.
I think I actually listened to the sitting president's sentiments yesterday after the Supreme Court ruling, and most important to discuss is the issues he hinted at, or he talked about, where he strongly expressed the point of let's not really focus on numbers to distinguish who won and who lost, but let's have a clear look into the process that brings us these numbers, because the process is as important as the numbers are. And I think he had a very fantastic point to bring across, but the point is he's self-indicted in the same statement. So the people listening to him don't really get his commitment to such statements, because we remember 2013, we remember 2017, we even remember his nomination for president when the ICC case was looming large behind his back, and we also remember the treatment of the judiciary under his reign. There were so many misses, so that it doesn't give him the moral standing to be able to to be able to direct a country in the direction they should go. However, they say even the broken clock tells the correct time. So it's very important for us to interrogate those sentiments by the president and ask ourselves, does he know what we don't know? Or maybe from his point of view, did he see what we did not see that we need to look at? And I appreciate what Wakili has said, that our democracy is a growing one. We cannot sit somewhere and claim we have reached the summit of our democracy. We are still building it up. And so there is need to continue bringing in all manner of material that might be essential for building a stronger premise of democracy going forward. So those are sentiments, and even the sentiments that we've heard from Maendeleo ya Wanawake leadership, they have also hinted at the same. They have also given the president-elect a number of things to ponder, to look at, and to see how going forward we can collectively move as one nation. So that is really important, and I just also reiterate the same statement that there is 7-point-something million this side, there is 6.9 million this side. They all form a country. That's what we should commit ourselves to.
I think, Bishop, we could fortify it from where Alenga has talked about, and one of the interests in President-elect William Ruto's interest will be, let's say, because of the politics that divide the nation. The chairperson of Maendeleo ya Wanawake has noted there that 6.9 million Kenyans did not vote for president-elect, and Alenga noted that about 8 million Kenyans didn't even bother themselves to go to the ballot. That just underscores how we need to if we are to go ahead and forge this nation in a manner that we want and better it from where it is, then we have to have some reconciliation. And looking from what the president, the outgoing president, and the President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday talked about, and he didn't even congratulate his deputy, then it underscores how we need, first of all, to try and come together. Yes, the president actually talked about extending an olive branch yesterday.
Yes, if I remember, the president-elect alluded to that. He said he will be president of all.
Yeah, actually he noted that they have not even spoken in months.
Yes, he said he has not spoken to the president for months, and he said he's going to call him, and he's going to call all the rest that they contested against each other. But he said he's going to be the president of everybody. And if you remember also, he said something that was very important. You know, as a church, there are things we listen to. He said he's not going to be vengeful. He has nothing to revenge against anybody. That was a very good statement. And he said he's going to respect the outgoing president and also our former leaders in terms of, I think, the former vice presidents. And he said he's going to honor, including their packages that they receive. For me, that was very good. And he also said he's inviting the ones that they contested with, and particularly Raila Odinga, so that they can brainstorm and see how best the country goes forward. And although he said it like jokingly, but it was very important, because he said so that he can tell him how he intends to be at opposition and how he intends to do some checkups on him. So on that, I think the president-elect has scored very well, because I listened to him. He said he's going to be the president of everybody, including those who never voted for him. I think that is a call for unity, but there is much more. You know, actions speaks louder. So we will be waiting to see whether exactly what he said is what he's going to do. Yeah, that is another thing. I can't say exactly what he said he's going to do, so we will wait until we see the actions.
Yes, and we are hoping that at least we will have the bridges crossed before we start a new regime.
Yes.
And Wakili, looking at what we saw in the Apex Court, we have a lot of international media and the international community was keenly watching, just to underscore the kind of jurisprudence that our nation has grown into. And we are carving our name in so many history books in terms of how we are conducting ourselves in matters electoral and actually in sorting out election petitions in this country.
I think that is something to borrow. And actually, you know, our constitution is rated among the progressive ones in the entire world. Mm-hmm. And therefore, what springs from that is that there is various electoral issues that actually the development in terms of what we have mm-hmm. actually emanated from those court decisions. And more importantly, we've seen in various African nations the way they solve their electoral disputes. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it became something of interest to the international community and mainly our neighbors. Remember, there was a lot of things coming from the social media, how Ugandans were wondering mm-hmm. how are we doing our elections, so they were concerned how best they can also borrow that. So I think it is something that of interest that we actually pride ourselves in how we solve our electoral dispute. We've seen violence, we have also been there one time. Therefore, how best we move forward is something that is actually becoming a point to buy from other people, other nations. So what our Supreme Court has done, and actually our entire judiciary has come of age, and actually the way we resolve our dispute is something that is of interest to the other nations. So that is why actually there was a lot of interest. Actually, there were those international committee of eminent persons actually sending a delegation here to actually try and monitor and borrow a leaf from how best all these things work, where we go wrong, and how best it can be improved. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think I can pride myself that actually we are moving towards the right direction. We really just need to ensure mm-hmm. That we interrogate every process so that actually we don't miss anything that could really make us much better.
And Alenga, I would like you to also weigh in on that, because it spells out a lot when it comes to our foreign policy. And you do remember that back in 2013, comparing 2013 and this year, 2022, we have moved a long way in making our foreign policy quite robust. And I'm saying this because you do remember before the 2013 election, there were choices have consequences. The international community were keeping a hawk eye, as opposed to now where they are looking at us keenly as equals, just because of how we've been able to conduct ourselves in those 4 presidential petitions in 10 years.
You know, Njue, it's imperative for us to understand that nations will treat you the way you treat yourself primarily. Nations will regard you the way you run your processes. And this time around, and progressively, Kenya has demonstrated that we are at a place where the international community has something to admire from us. Many nations, when they go into elections in the African continent, it's usually a moment of do or die, and international media comes in batteries, and they always know that they're going to carry home stories of violence, stories of rape for women, stories of bloodbath and all that. But when they come to Kenya, they unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which perspective, they just have to enjoy our sunshine and our beaches and then go back home without a screaming headline for our country on fire, for that matter. So we have distinguished ourselves as a mature people, and if we try to bring that dividend back home, I think it's very important for our politicians to now emulate the way Kenyans have conducted themselves. Our political class is still lagging there. We see them have squabbles among themselves. We see, well, you remember the dramatic moments you will see in Parliament, people hurling water bottles and tearing papers and all that. But then the citizenry has demonstrated that there's some safer way, mature way, civilized way of going through moments of grief, as it were, for those who have lost, and moments of celebration for those who have won. We have conducted ourselves in a manner that is unprecedented, in a manner that is admirable, and I just pray that we keep here. If there is any Kenyan watching outside there, this is how we want 2027 to look like. This is how we want 2032 to look like and going forward, so that we don't reach any point in time when we claw back the gains we have demonstrated to the entire world. So it's really a moment to celebrate country. It's really a moment to celebrate Kenya, and it's that moment to feel proud being Kenyan.
And talking of celebrations, Bishop, we do celebrate democracy actually since what we saw at the Apex Court yesterday. And talking about democracy, the new president-elect was quick to note that the criminal justice system will not be used to further a political or to settle political scores. And another thing he talked about is he said he would like agencies to be quite independent. Talking about the judiciary, he was quite non-committal on what he's going to do in 100 days until he's swearing in. But he did mention some of the things that are going to be forming basis of his leadership, talking about the operationalization of the judiciary fund and ensuring these agencies that are mandated to further our democracy are independent. That is something that we've not had in a while.
Yes, he pronounced himself on the independence of judiciary, including even finances. They will have their own finances and control, and also police. I really followed him. And that is very good. I think if he does that, he will have a big score. And he will win the hearts of Kenyans more, because Kenyans want to walk to a judiciary where they're sure when I walk there, I will get justice, and they're not twisted and all that. And also in terms of police doing investigations, when they are truly independent, they can do a good job, as opposed to when they will need resources to do a certain investigation. And probably the national government doesn't release that. It compromises on everything. And on the issue on how, yes, the question was put to him on what will he achieve in 100 days, and he was non-committal. Actually, he said we wait for that day of inauguration, he will speak about it. But he said something. He said, one, he's immediately going to work on the cost of living. That is very good. The cost of living, and also fertilizer to help the farmers produce food. I think that is very important. We would expect the president-elect, when both of them got to government together with President Uhuru Kenyatta, flour was at 90. We want to see that coming down to that. Yes, we know the fuel challenge is global.
And the drought as well.
Yes, and drought and all that. The fuel challenge is global, but we also expect him to do something on that, because once you control that, then you will control the cost of living. And for me, when I heard about lowering the cost of living, then I knew he's connecting with Kenyans. He feels what they are going through. He knows the challenges that Kenyans are going through. We expect to see that immediately he gets to office.
Perhaps we can build up with what Bishop has talked about in terms of the 100 days. He did not really commit, but he did touch on some of the things that he is going to be looking at. And being an officer of the court, I'm quite sure the issue of the operationalization of the judiciary fund, which has not been even operationalized since we promulgated the constitution, and it was one of the things that was supposed to happen after we passed the new constitution. Omanga.
I think the president-elect actually indeed made a lot of pledges during the campaigns, and actually mentioned about the issue of food cost of living, fuel, and the issue of small and medium enterprises fund that would be operationalized actually to help those in such business to grow. But you see now when the reality dawns, because there is a lot of factors to be considered, because the issues of fuel, the issues of fertilizer, those factors of production, when talked in terms of the entirety, I think the most important thing, the last port of call that actually indeed helped Kenyans is the judiciary. When we have a functional and independent judiciary, then everything else falls on the side, because when there is is injustice, whether there is bad laws coming from the parliament, whether there is excesses of the executive, where the population gets solace is in the judiciary. Because whatever thing that happens from the executive to the legislature, they can never escape judicial scrutiny. Therefore, I think in terms of operationalization of the judiciary fund and ensuring full and complete independence of the judiciary, and ensuring that what the cases that the judges handle, when there is sustainably facilitated, I think even the time that cases take in court to complete actually would be substantially reduced. Therefore, I think ours is to wish the president well, and we give him the necessary support, and actually to help him also build and strengthen the institutions of governance. Indeed, he pledged the reforms in the police force, where he said the police will be well remunerated, and actually it is something that is of concern, because since the late retired President Kibaki, the police has never had any salary increment, and we saw for the first time police trying to move to court so that at least they get justice. So I think in that regard, ours is just to wish the president well, and actually to the country, the population, to give them the necessary support, and also to put them to account of all these pledges that they made to Kenyans. They actually try and endeavor to ensure they are realized.
Yes, and Alenga, it's going to be an interesting 100 days in office, and that is why exactly he said that he is putting his house in order, so that in the next 100 days after he is swearing in, he will be talking about the first 100 daes. But indeed, there are quite pressing issues in the country, and to borrow from Deputy President-elect Rigathi Gachagua's speech yesterday, he said we are inheriting a battered economy, we are inheriting a country that is a little bit not the way it should be, and we are up to the task to ensure that Kenyans celebrate the country that we are in. 100 days. Alenga.
I think lots of what awaits President-elect Dr. William Ruto is a very huge task to restore an economy, to bring the country together and build on cohesion and togetherness as a nation. There is also the aspect of, trying to nurture our democracy to the next level, and it all falls on his hands. And so I think maybe to make matters easy for him, the first 100 days, the president-elect should focus on the cost of living. That is one of the things that are really, really ailing Kenyans, and that is what goes directly to the hands of a Kenyan, And if he works on that, then he will have built a commitment that actually going forward, he's going to implement on all those other things. And as the good Bishop Ndeda said earlier on, that one of the things that endeared President-elect William Ruto to many Kenyans is the fact that he spoke to the plight of high cost of living, which resonated with so many Kenyans. And if that's were the point, then he should first and foremost confront that. When he confronts that, then he builds a willingness within the population that yes, indeed, this man is going to take us on a good journey. And again, that would be I think that would be the incentive for the other divide to actually believe in his leadership. So in a nutshell, we say right now, as Dr. William Ruto is going into office, there are people who are scared of his reign. They don't know what it portends. And there are those who have confidence in his reign, and they are waiting with bated breath. So to these two people, to those that fear his reign, may he disapprove them by turning out to be the best president they ever wished. For those who have trust in him already, may he confirm their trust that indeed you made the right decision.
Bishop Ndeda, and yesterday in one of the firm things that the president-elect talked about, he said that the era of politics of deceit is now over. Of course, he was sending a message to politicians as well when it comes to his government. He said everybody will be accountable and they will ensure that the opposition is checking up on them. And just underscores how Kenya is a politically charged country. After this election, you will see a couple of months, then you will see some formations starting to build up. And unfortunately, that of course derails development, and just 1 or 2 years before election, the country will be in an election mood, which is of course not what we want. And the president-elect want to change that in his speech yesterday.
Yes, what you are speaking is very important. You know, politicians in this country are very selfish. Most of them are very selfish. And I can assure you from where I'm seated, I expect challenges. Even if it were the Right Honorable Raila Odinga who won, I expected challenges. And these are my reasons. If you look at the boards, the coalitions, they have come in many parties together. And going by the fact that politicians are selfish, when some of them will not get what they wanted and what they expected, indeed you'll begin to see challenges. Because how you divide 22 cabinet slots to 20 parties, it is an issue. And you know, most of them don't want to be ambassadors. They want to be somewhere where they can make noise for the next 5 years. So if you don't slot them with that 22, it's like you did honor them. You did do it. So those are the challenges we expect. But we want to call on politicians to put the country first than their selfish interest. We want to give the president-elect a chance to prove himself, a chance to fulfill his pledges. And I want to put it to them, even if they were them, they wouldn't do what they would expect from him. I think we want to own the government. All of us, Kenyans, want to own the government and feel that this is our government, whether I'm in government or not, whatever position I hold in the society. I just want a government that will deliver services, because when services are delivered, I can work for myself and better my life and all that. So politicians, kindly, we know you and we know what you are capable of doing. Kindly spare us and allow this nation to move on. Because I'm speaking because I know they will come.
Yes, and talking of politics, Bishop, Omanga, I would like us to, in the next couple of minutes, talk about politics now in regards to the pronouncement yesterday. As soon as President-elect was declared the winner by IEBC, he dangled some political carrots for some parties, and he has been able to woo some MPs on his side, which now tips the scales in his favor, at both at the Senate and at the National Assembly. Some people, of course, including Azimio, have talked about, man, this is below the belt, man. Why are you doing this? And we have the numbers, the 3 months that these coalitions are supposed to at least be solid are not over yet. This is quite a strategy, Omanga.
I think it is a very, very important strategy. And coming from the caliber of a politician, William Samoei Ruto, is always a very strategic politician. Remember, during that period where there was an expectation that there could be a runoff. So basically, I think maybe why he took that step is also to ensure that he consolidates enough support so that in any event that the court were to decide otherwise, that people are going for a rerun, then actually he had enough troops even in areas where he didn't. And more importantly, again, is the fact that when you are running a government, you must also ensure that you have enough support both in the National Assembly and the Senate. The reason being, certain processes, certain policies must have that backing of the law, and the law is made in Parliament. So if you do not really have enough soldiers on your side, then basically maybe there are certain things that you might try to push through the agenda in the Parliament or the Senate that could not really see the light of the day. And that notwithstanding, you remember there is the issue of election of the Speaker of both houses. So that one also calls for numbers. So you can see the kind and the nature of a politician that Dr. William Samuel Ruto is. He's someone that actually tried to plan ahead. So it is not that he's trying to dangle carrots or what, but he's trying to use the element of persuasion, political persuasion, as a tool to ensure that actually he gets enough people on his side, as many as possible. Because for you to have peace, you remember the issue during when we have the issue of tyranny of numbers in the 2013 and the subsequent election. It is something that you really have to get enough support both in the Houses of Parliament to ensure that you push your agenda. Otherwise, if you are to push up a certain agenda of the mamambogas and the borders, and then you don't really have enough people in Parliament to actually legislate on that, because these things must be legislated. So I think in terms of politics, I think that's a very good strategy, and hongera kwake.
Alenga, do you hold the same sentiments in regards to marshalling the troops? Omanga says that even in war, if you have a big army, then indeed you are bound to success.
I may want to shift a little bit from Wakile's point of view and look at these things from a very ultra-political perspective. And if you contextualize the whole thing, you realize that coming in, the quest for Dr. William Ruto into the presidency has not been an easy one. There has been a lot of issues on the road, and eventually he has managed to get there. So it goes without saying that such a man will want to get to manufacture his own cushioning and his own security to make sure that he does not find himself where the late Mwai Kibaki found himself after the 2007 election, where the ODM party had the majority in parliament and really nothing could move. But again, it shifts us back to around 2013, where there was the issue of tyranny of numbers, and on record that is a time most of the bad laws were passed in this country, including the review of the Public Order Act, the Security Amendment rules, the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, and even the election amendment rules that were amended actually just a few days into the election. So during that time, everything would carry the day as long as the whip says this is the direction we're going. So it scares us when we imagine we want to get back to such a moment. So from that point of, from that perspective, then you try to ask yourself, what does the future, what does this portend for the future? And also, if you also interrogate that this is a man who vehemently opposed this constitution in 2005, and then now he's becoming the custodian of that constitution, and then wields majority in both houses, then what do we expect? Do we expect a rewriting of that constitution? Because laws are made in parliament, they are ratified in the Senate, they are sent by the president. So if that path is looking like it's going to favor him, then it a little bit scares us, and we pray the heavens that that doesn't happen. However, we must also pay cognizance to the fact that Dr. William Ruto, in the Greek philosophy, he finds himself in what we would call he's between the Charybdis and the Scylla, because one, he has to protect himself from what will eminently be constant attacks from a very strong opposition, because you see the numbers before him reaching out to the other independent candidates and independent MPs in the houses, the difference is very little, is very slim. So you'd expect a heated parliament, and then government positions most of the time will face assault from the opposition, and as it were, he has actually distinguished very clearly, and I really appreciate that he's not going to strike handshakes with the opposition. He's going to let the opposition do its work. So while doing that, then he must also take care of his backyard.
Okay, 1 minute each as we wind up on how we expect everything to turn out. Of course, tomorrow we will be having a discussion on what will be transpiring in Parliament on Thursday. But I would like to sample your last comments, Bishop.
Yes, I want to appeal to Kenyans to continue maintaining peace, because peace is very important. Even those whom their candidates didn't pull through, you would still want peace if you had your candidate through. So peace has won, and let peace continue, so that in that atmosphere of peace, then we can realize services and development for our country.
Indeed. 1 minute as we wind up, Omanga.
I think it is important that those who have managed to get positions of power to come together and realize that the responsibility bestowed upon them is that of service delivery, service delivery, service delivery. Let us put our political differences aside and ensure that we correct what is wrong, so that we move forward and ensure that the people of Kenya would not lose hope in the voting, and ensure that their votes has a lot of meaning in terms of the issue of governance. So mine is just peace, and also wish the president-elect the best of luck in his endeavor to...
Gentlemen, thank you so much indeed for your time and your insight. Charles Omanga, who is an advocate of the High Court and also a political analyst. We also had Torosterdt, Alenga, who is a political analyst, and we had Bishop Hudson Ndeda, who is the church and clergy chairman, national chairman. And thank you so much for your insight. Indeed, we have been talking about trying to look at the state of the nation in regards to what transpired yesterday. We had the Apex Court affirming President-elect William Ruto's win. We also had President Uhuru Kenyatta, who made his maiden speech. Since we went to the ballot on 9th of August, and we also had IEBC. After the vindication by the court, they had a presser, talked about a lot of issues that actually made a lot of interest and a lot of sense when it comes to electoral matters. Indeed, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for watching. But I'm giving my baton now to Tamrini, who will be having a live conversation in Swahili from 12 to 1. Thank you so much for watching. My name is BenTroy. Njue Odingo is our sign language interpreter for this live broadcast. Do have yourself a blessed still morning, 3 minutes to midday.